Southern California, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. We have ourselves quite a busy show as it's March Madness, and Southern California is busy with the Pac-12, Mountain West, Western Athletic Conference, and the Big West Conference being busy with their conference tournaments. Which teams are still in, and which teams are taking the next bus back to the off-season. And the Freeway Faceoff had its second and third installments. Were the Kings victorious, or were the Ducks victorious? Or was it a split? Also, Team LeBron emerged victorious over the NBA All-Star Weekend, but honestly, it still shouldn't have been played. I mean, I'm happy that LeBron is still, I guess, undefeated in All-Star games when he's a manager, but not really. It didn't have the same punch in terms of past NBA All-Star games. I'll still talk about it, though. And we have some NCAA water polo news, as the NCAA tournament in men's water polo starts today, as UCLA, USC, and even Cal Baptist, who made history last weekend, will be doing battle into hopefully hoisting the NCAA trophy at the end of the season. Which team will come out on top? All that and more here on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Thank you all for tuning in on this beautiful Friday afternoon. We have ourselves quite the busy Friday going on in regards to NCAA men's water polo. We have a little bit of some Laker Clipper talk. We have some hockey to get into regarding the LA Kings and the Anaheim Ducks. And then we also have this thing called March Madness going on. Yeah, but that's going to be the main gist of this show. So, anyway, before we get into the action regarding Southern California sports, we still have a word from our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Legacy Financial. Last year was a tough year, and especially with everything going on with the pandemic and whatnot, and we're actually in the 1-year anniversary of the pandemic. Besides that, 2020 was a tough year. However, staying positive, keeping your faith, and continuing to work hard is the goal. If you're in a financial struggle at the moment, you're doing well, you want to get to the next level, or you're looking for a new opportunity to work for yourself and earn more money part-time, give AO a call at 510-928-2104 to book your appointment today. AO and her husband Andrew are just two people on a mission to help families build a legacy. You can follow Legacy Financial on Twitter at Legacy_Uncut, and you can follow them on Instagram at Sims_Uncut. iSports Radio's second sponsor is Mama's Always Right Media. Are you feeling overwhelmed with schoolwork? Are those essays keeping you up at night? Don't lose sleep, just pick up the phone. Mama's Always Right Writing Agency will give you quality essays, and they will always make their deadlines. Sleep soundly knowing that they are on the job. For more information, call 626-653-3649. That number again is 626-653-3649. And while you're at it, you could also check out Mama's Always Right Media's podcasts, such as It Goes Down in the PM. Make sure you check out the newest episode of It Goes Down in the PM. And then Mama's Always Right's second podcast is Coffee After Dark. Don't miss the next chapter of your favorite love story. Check out Season 2 of Coffee After Dark, brought to you by Mama's Always Right Media, where they will help you open your business from start to finish. And then iSports Radio's final sponsor is the Sports Rundown. Are you a sports fan but have too much going on in your life these days to keep up with the 24/7 news cycle? Or maybe you are new to sports and want to understand the nuances better. If so, then the Sports Rundown is for you. They are a new podcast that gives you basic, professional, and collegiate sports news, stats, tidbits, and fun facts by the time you get to work, start that second cup of coffee, or finish walking the dog. Enough information to make you rich with knowledge involving sports while talking about current sporting events. And they will teach you something fun along the way, like about mascots, uniforms, history, feel-good stories, and sports rules. They even cover the Premier League, if you're a soccer fan. New episodes drop Monday and Friday mornings, so come give them a listen. Thank you to all three of our sponsors for being the official sponsors of iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. All right, now let's jump into the Southern California action, because we're actually only going to go like an hour, if not a little over an hour. So we'll start with the topic that everyone really cares about. NCAA men's and women's basketball. So a lot has happened ever since last week. Long story short, on the women's side of things, the Western Athletic Conference concluded, and LMU didn't win the tournament. They lost in the quarterfinals to, I want to say it was St. Mary. It was either St. Mary. Yeah, I think it was St. Mary's. They lost in the quarterfinals. They gave it a good effort, but they just were overmatched. But despite that, LMU women's basketball had a great season. And then we all know Pepperdine lost in the first round to LMU. But the fact that LMU actually won 2 games in the Western Athletic, or not the Western Athletic Conference, the West Coast Conference tournament is actually quite astounding. So, good job. Good job, good effort. So, there was that. And then, as for the West Coast Conference men's basketball tournament, long story short, Pepperdine got all the way to the semifinals. Yay! Unfortunately, they lost in the semis to BYU in overtime. It was very disappointing. Like I forget what the kid's name was, but someone on Pepperdine made a jump shot to force overtime, but then BYU kind of pulled away in overtime just because Pepperdine was making too many mistakes. I mean, it would have been cool to see Pepperdine in the West Coast Conference finals, but would they have beaten Gonzaga? Probably not. And I highly doubt Pepperdine gets into the NCAA tournament. Same with LMU. I think LMU also lost along the way. They lost to, St. Mary's too in the quarterfinals, which was tough, but that's how challenging the West Coast Conference is. Other than Gonzaga, of course, which Gonzaga won the West Coast Conference tournament on the men's and women's side. Go figure. But there's that for the West Coast Conference. The Western Athletic Conference, in terms of men's basketball, Cal Baptist lost to Seattle, which made me sad face because I was really looking forward to Grand Canyon versus Seattle, or not Grand Canyon versus Seattle, Grand Canyon versus Cal Baptist Part 3, because Cal Baptist actually beat Grand Canyon one time. So if Seattle does somehow win against Grand Canyon, which I doubt, I'll be sad face. Because I really think Cal Baptist would have had a shot against Grand Canyon, but oh well. Anyway, as for Cal Baptist on the women's side, they had a 2-round bye. They had a bye in the first round and then a bye in the quarterfinals. They faced New Mexico State in the semifinals. New Mexico State beat Seattle. Seattle was actually came close to knocking off Cal Baptist, but fortunately for the Lady Lancers, they were able to grind out the win last Friday. So good on them. Cal Baptist women's basketball is 2 wins away from being undefeated. Yay! But they're not going to be in the NCAA tournament because of the transition period, which is complete cheeks, if you ask me. Yes, I said it. Shots fired. Yes, I said the transition rule is complete cheeks. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. You know what I mean? Alright, so there's that in regards to the Western Athletic Conference. let's jump over to the Mountain West Conference. So San Diego State women's basketball, they lost in the first round. I forgot who they lost in the first round to, but they kind of got smothered in the first round. Let me double check my handy dandy notes. And it might not be up here. Oops. But either way, San Diego State did lose in the first round. It was, I believe it was in the quarterfinals. If I could literally could find it, like, jeez. But it wasn't too big of a surprise because San Diego State women's basketball isn't all that good. It's not anything disrespectful, but personally, I didn't think they would have a big run in the Mountain West Athletic Conference. Nothing against them, honestly, but I knew their tournament run wasn't going to be that they weren't going to go deep in the tournament, and they lost to Air Force 56-48, and Air Force was the 8th seed, while SDSU was the 8, or no, Air Force was the 9th seed, San Diego State was the 8th seed. And I highly doubt San Diego State gets into the NCAA tournament. If they get in, then boy howdy, that would be quite something. Then they'll get Stanford or UConn. On the men's side of things, in terms of the Mountain West Conference, San Diego State reigned victorious in their quarterfinal game against Wyoming. Except they actually only won by 3. I was very surprised that San Diego State won by a minimal margin. By that small of a margin. Like, I know March Madness is basically anything can happen, but I didn't expect them to only be up 1 at halftime and then only to win by 3 points. San Diego State won 69-66. Yes, the ultimate number, 69. I love it. So yeah, San Diego State, the number 19 team in the AP coaches polls, was able to squeak one out, and San Diego State is on to the semifinals where they will face Nevada. Now, here's the thing about San Diego State. So San Diego State, when they played Nevada, they won both times, but it was in close fashion. They beat Nevada the first time 65-60, and then they beat Nevada the second time 69-67. What's up with San Diego State scoring 69 points? Who am I, judge? Anyway, so yeah, San Diego State is facing Nevada, which I believe Nevada is the they're the number 5 seed, and they upset Boise State. Good for them. Good stuff. I forgot that Boise State lost yesterday. They're pretty much going to be an NIT team. Sorry to all the Broncos fans, but that's just how it is. So I think San Diego State really needs to play better tonight. They have to play better if they want to succeed against Nevada, considering the Mountain West Conference has been a complete merry-go-round in terms of which team is better than which team. Like Colorado State, Utah State, and San Diego State all advanced to the semifinals. Those are the top 3 seeds. Nevada was the only theoretically upset from yesterday in terms of the Mountain West men's basketball tournament. So there was that. And that's good for Nevada, but I really hope San Diego State does pull out the win. If they do, then they'll be in the championship game tomorrow, and then you'll be hearing it from me. Yay! But if not, then I could still see San Diego State making the NCAA tournament, but it might be very close. I think they might just barely get in. I think they may be the last 4 in, if not last 8 in. But them currently being ranked right now, and then them being ranked for most of the season, kind of spells San Diego State should be in the NCAA tournament. They're just going to have a bad seed. They'd probably be like a 12, 13, maybe worse than a 14 seed. But don't count out the Aztecs. They are a sneaky good team, and I think they're starting to play some of their best basketball as of right now. Ever since they they got rattled against, I think it was Utah State. Yeah, Utah State. They've come back better than ever. They haven't lost a game actually. They've actually won 2, 4, 6, 8. They've won 10 in a row, so that's good for them. And despite getting a challenge from UNLV, San Diego State in the regular season finale, San Diego State was the regular season champion. That's another thing I gotta add in there. San Diego State is the regular season champion of the Mountain West Athletic Conference. So, yeah, I don't see how San Diego State doesn't make the NCAA tournament. They gotta get in there. Let's do it. Let's do it, San Diego State. So there's that in regards to the Mountain West Conference men's and women's basketball tournaments. So San Diego State is still alive in terms of that conference, and Cal Baptist is alive in terms of the women's side of things of the Western Athletic Conference. So, yay verily. So now let's go to the Pac-12. Actually, no. Let's go to before we go to the Pac-12. Let's go to the Big West Conference. No. Let's go to the Big West Conference. So the Big West Conference has been busy. So we'll start with the women's side of things. So we'll start on the women's side of things. On Tuesday, we had Cal State Fullerton edging UC Riverside 55-51. Quite the impressive victory considering Fullerton hasn't had too many victories this year. They actually had 3 overall going into that game against UC Riverside. So for them to pull it out was absolutely amazing. So good job to good job to Cal State Fullerton. UC Riverside unfortunately has a tough end of their season, but they'll be back. So as for Wednesday, or a couple days ago, Cal State Fullerton unfortunately fell to UC Davis 61-54, which made me sad face. But if anyone had Cal State Fullerton winning the tournament, more power to you. But even if Cal State Fullerton won the Big West tournament, what would their seed be? It'd be pretty low. They'd probably still be in the 16 through 13 seed. I'm just saying, y'all. Nothing again. I'm not trying to be mean or I'm not trying to bash the Titans, but it's just their sub 500 record would just be ugh. And how they pretty much finished at the bottom of the Big West tournament would be quite something. It would be quite cool though to see a Cinderella story. So, yeah. So, other quarterfinal action in the Big West Conference tournament, we had Cal State Bakersfield losing to Hawaii 81-67. That also made me sad face because that game was pretty close until Hawaii started to pull away. It's a tough loss for Bakersfield, but they had a good run in the Big West Conference for the first time this year. They'll be back, hopefully. As for other quarterfinal action, we had UC Irvine edging UC Santa Barbara. Now, this was a thriller. UC Santa Barbara was leading the entire way. UC Santa Barbara was the number 7 seed, while UC Irvine was the number 2 seed. UC Irvine was a suspect number 2 seed, as UC Santa Barbara was playing throughout some of its best basketball in that game, and they were doing everything possible until UC Irvine started to tie it up in the fourth quarter, and then it was tied 90-90, and then someone hit a jump shot with about 6 seconds to go, and then UC Santa Barbara unfortunately couldn't get a shot off, and that was it. UC Irvine won. So, good for you, UC Irvine. I do feel bad for UC Santa Barbara because, again, I like seeing upsets, but unfortunately it just wasn't meant to be, which is sad face for me, for all fans that are UC Santa Barbara, but they gave it a great effort. I'm just saying. I really think that is a great accomplishment how they took the number 2 seed down to the wire. So good for UC Santa Barbara. So UC Irvine advances to the semifinals, where they're actually playing right now. Who are they playing, dare you ask? Let's look at the final quarterfinal game of the Big West Conference women's basketball tournament. So the last one featured the last quarterfinal game featured number 3 Long Beach State and number 6 Cal Poly. Now, for those that are saying this is probably going to be an upset, you haven't seen Cal Poly Long Beach State. Cal Poly actually has had beaten Long Beach State twice this season. One in heartbreaking fashion for Long Beach, as one of Cal Poly's players hit a game-winning three-pointer, which made all Long Beach sad face. As for this game was very tight. The whole lead was basically passed around like a bread basket on Thanksgiving. Long Beach State led by as many as 8, but then Cal Poly came back to make the game close, and then it was just trading the lead away as Long Beach led, then Cal Poly led, then Long Beach led, then Cal Poly led. Then the final seconds of the game, Long Beach State actually had a chance to win the game as they were up 61-60, but then one of their players missed 2 free throws, and then with about 6 seconds left, Cal Poly called timeout. They got the ball in bounds, they got the ball into the paint, and then unfortunately for Long Beach State fans, they made a game-winning layup, and that was that. So Long Beach State lost in a heartbreaking fashion again to Cal Poly, which really sucks. There's nothing worse than losing off of a game winner, but that's March Madness for you. The madness can go for you or it can go against you. But I knew Long Beach State was in a lot of trouble when they played Cal Poly. I mean, it was still a successful season for Long Beach State, and keep in mind, I am a Long Beach State student, so bear with me here. So it was still a great season for Long Beach State. I'm happy they had such a successful season. They won their first 10 conference games, which hadn't been accomplished in a while, but they kind of faltered down the stretch. They lost... How many games did they lose down the stretch in conference play? They lost 7 of their last 8, which is not a good look. And when they faced Cal Poly and it got down to the final seconds, me as a Long Beach State student was like, please don't score, please don't score, please don't score. And then they scored. I'm like, gosh dang it. And I feel bad for most of Long Beach State seniors. Oh no. That is probably the worst way to go out. Just losing off of a game winner. At least it wasn't a buzzer beater, but still. Long Beach had no timeouts. They only had 0.6 seconds to inbound and then quick catch and shoot, but yeah. So the semifinals include UC Davis versus Hawaii and Long Beach State Cal Poly versus UC Irvine. So the Cal Poly UC Irvine game is actually happening right now, and Cal Poly is actually up 16-7 in the second quarter. So the winner of Cal Poly UC Irvine gets to have a nice little date with UC Davis, as UC Davis beat Hawaii, but none of us care for UC Davis and Hawaii. Why? Because they're not Southern California. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. So if UC Irvine doesn't get anything going here, they could be on the next bus back to Irvine. So there's that. But that's that for the Big West Conference women's basketball tournament. Now let's jump to the Big West Conference men's basketball tournament. Starting on Tuesday, we had Long Beach State, a team that had so much uncertainty, dominate Cal State Northridge, 85-63. Long Beach State, not gonna lie, had went through a lot. One of their players actually quit, or actually was dismissed. It was last Saturday where Long Beach State dismissed its best player, Michael Carter III, which that was inconvenient timing. But Long Beach State released a statement saying that the team is basically moving on from Michael Carter III, which is not good news. And it seems like every single year Long Beach State has a men's basketball team, there's always one player that does get booted off the team under Dan Monson. So I'm not trying to say someone was in the wrong, but this kind of happens every year. So and I don't know the full-on details of why Michael Carter III got kicked off the team. I'm just going to leave it at that, okay? So no one asked me about what happened with Michael Carter III because I don't know what the whereabouts were. So anyway, back to the Big West Conference tournament. So good upset by Long Beach State. Cal Poly also beat Cal State Fullerton. Cal Poly was the 10th seed, while Fullerton was the 7th seed, and the Mustangs took down the Titans 87-82, advancing them to the quarterfinals of the Big West Conference tournament. Now moving on to Thursday. So moving on to Thursday, we had UC Santa Barbara, the top seed UC Santa Barbara, taking down Long Beach State 95-87. Great effort by Long Beach State. Here's the thing about that quarterfinal matchup. Neither of those teams knew what to expect from one another. But Long Beach State had nothing left to lose, so they just basically went out on a possible blaze of glory, and they just gave it their all. And sure enough, they gave them a challenge, but it just wasn't enough. So UC Santa Barbara advances to the semifinals of the Big West Conference men's basketball tournament. Good for you, Gauchos. They are having a historic year. But my question is this. If they somehow lose in the finals of the Big West Conference tournament, would they still be considered to partake in the NCAA tournament, despite them getting a low seed, or would they just go straight NIT? Because you could make the argument for them being in the NCAA tournament, but they just don't have the standout wins. But it would be cool if two Big West Conference teams made it to the NCAA tournament, but I highly doubt that happens. So there's that. So as for UC Santa Barbara's opponent, they face the winner of UC Davis and Cal State Bakersfield, and UC Davis was able to emerge victorious against Bakersfield, winning 58-56 on a game-winning layup, which was not fun times for Bakersfield. That was very heartbreaking if you're a Roadrunners fan. But Bakersfield has a lot to be proud of. They knocked off the perennial giant that was UC Irvine. And this was Bakersfield's first season as a Big West Conference team, so they have nothing to hang their heads over. They also... No, they didn't beat Cal State or UC Santa Barbara. But still, they had a phenomenal year. They won 15 games and in a very tough Big West Conference So I think this Bakersfield team is going to be back sooner rather than later. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. So moving on to the lower part of the Big West Conference tournament bracket, we had UC Riverside taking down Hawaii 62-52, advancing them to the semifinals of the Big West Conference tournament. And they will play UC Irvine, as UC Irvine outlasted Cal Poly 58-51. With how the Big West Conference has had many close games, I think that tournament is very much well up for grabs. And personally, it wouldn't surprise me if there were any upsets. Like today, actually, I got this one random follower. Well, I don't think it was he wasn't a follower, but he was a UC Davis alum, and he commented, he's like, so does this mean UC Davis will be taking down the field? Because he was actually a UC Davis alum, and I know he was kind of joking, but I just told him, with how the Big West Conference has been going on, with how many close games that's happening, it wouldn't shock me if UC Davis actually won. UC Davis is actually the only NorCal school left in the tournament. If only Bakersfield had boxed out on that last layup attempt. Or not boxed out, they prevented that layup attempt from happening. But it is what it is. But regardless of what happens, the Big West Conference will have at least one Southern California team on the women's and men's side in the Big West Conference tournament finals. And it's going to be a fun time. So I'm looking forward to it. So I hope... It would be quite funny. It would be quite something if a Big West Conference tournament... Yeah, a Big West Conference team won in the NCAA tournament, kind of like how Irvine did a couple of years ago. I forget who Irvine beat. I think it was like TCU or something like that, or Kansas State. Either way, that was a fun year, but it wasn't fun how Russell Turner decided to be a jerk after the Oregon loss and whatnot. So, yeah. So there is that for the Big West Conference men's and women's basketball tournaments. On the men's side, UC Santa Barbara, UC Riverside, and UC Irvine are all still alive, representing Southern California, while Cal Poly and UC Irvine are still alive on the ladies' side, and one of them will get the honor of taking on UC Davis. And hopefully one of those teams will have an answer, because only one team in the Big West Conference has had an answer for Davis, and that was Hawaii, who Davis beat. So there's that. But on that note, we're actually going to take ourselves a quick little break. When we come back, we're going to discuss some Pac-12 men's hoops action and what's been going on with the ladies and the men regarding UCLA and USC. And then we'll also talk some NFL. We may talk a little NFL. We'll talk a little NBA, and then we'll mainly talk some NCAA men's water polo, as well as some hockey action between the Ducks and the Kings. So you're listening to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's going on, football fans? This is me, your boy Larry B, inviting you to join myself, Colin Reynolds, Mike Pat, and John Felipe for one of the most electrifying football shows you have ever heard. 3 and Out, right here at IE Sports Radio. Recap of the week before, a preview of what's to come, and of course, 3 hardcore head-to-head prime-time face-offs each week. You don't want to miss it. College football, and do you want to hear a college football show dedicated to all that is college football, including junior college and the CCAA and the NJCAA, the NAIA, and the NCAA, including Division III, Division II, Division I AA in the FCS, and Division I A in the FBS? Well then look no further. Join myself, Larry B, and my colleagues, Mr. H-Town Blake Henley, and Mr. Christian Espinoza, each week during the college football season for the latest in college football on 3 and Out College Edition, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And we're back with segment 2 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. You can check out all of our amazing shows here on IE Sports Radio on many different platforms such as Spreaker, TuneIn, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. The list goes on and on. TuneIn, you name it. So definitely do check out all of our shows and definitely check out everything that's going on, especially when it comes to the live calls on USRN, USRN2, Wellington Sports Radio, and IE Sports Radio. We have something big going on for March Madness, so definitely be on the lookout for all of our Mixlr accounts. Alright, so now let's get into Session 2, or Part 2 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Let's actually steer away from the NCAA men's basketball portion of the show, and let's circle the wagons and go to the NCAA men's water polo aspects of this show. So UCLA, US, and USC basically were in the semifinals of the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation Conference. And UCLA was playing Stanford while USC was playing Cal, which is cool stuff. And in the first semifinal of the MPSF, or the semifinal between UCLA and Stanford, UCLA lost to Stanford 8-11, which is not fun times because Stanford surprisingly has been good. Like Stanford and Cal, like normally it's supposed to be USC and UCLA, but this year it's surprisingly Stanford that's doing well, which is cool, I guess. But it was a bummer that UCLA lost in the semifinals, but they weren't the only team that lost in the semifinals, as USC also lost in the semifinals of the MPSF tournament, losing to Cal 11-8, which made me even more sad-faced because not one Southern California team made it to the MPSF finals. It was basically an all-NorCal matchup between Cal and Stanford. Cool stuff. So there was actually a third-place game. I kind of understand why there was a third-place game for the MPSF tournament, but a third-place game between USC and UCLA, do we really want to see a third-place game between two rivals? That's basically the battle of which team is worse than the other. So in the end, USC was actually able to beat UCLA 11-7 in the third-place game, which is always good if you're a USC fan, so there's that. USC and UCLA will be facing off they will be participating in the NCAA tournament next week. So next week, not this week, next week the NCAA men's water polo tournament starts. UCLA and USC did make the tournament. One Southern California team that did not make the NCAA tournament in terms of men's water polo is Pepperdine. And because their conference only had two teams with San Jose State and the other team, Pepperdine, in it, they unfortunately had to apply as an at-large team to make the NCAA tournament. And unfortunately for the Waves, they did not get in, which really sucks. Like, it's not Pepperdine's fault that the Big West Conference teams had to opt out and they were unable to play this year. So I think Pepperdine kind of got screwed in that regard. I think Pepperdine should have maybe had a play-in game against another team, which I'll be getting into in a little bit. But as for another team from Southern California in terms of NCAA men's water polo, Cal Baptist is actually going to the NCAA tournament as they managed to beat Loyola Marymount, the number 6 Loyola Marymount, 10-6 in the semifinals of the WWPA championships. And the Lancers advanced to the championship game where they defeated Air Force 11-9, winning the WWPA Conference Championship for the first time in school history and for the first time as an NCAA Division I program. Cal Baptist men's water polo is going dancing. Congratulations, Lancers. okay, we don't need to applause them too much. Like, come on now. Anyway, so Cal Baptist is automatically into the NCAA tournament, and as well as USC and UCLA. USC and UCLA got in as at-large teams because I guess their strength of schedule was better than Pepperdine's. So, as for the NCAA tournament, USC will be facing Bucknell. And actually, before I get into that matchup, USC will be the home site of the NCAA tournament. So USC basically gets home field advantage. Yay! But anyway, USC plays Bucknell at 4 p.m. Pacific time. Bucknell was the conference champion of their conference. As for the other quarterfinal, UCLA will be facing Cal Baptist at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So basically, it's a 6-team NCAA tournament bracket. Cal Baptist versus UCLA, USC versus Bucknell. I believe the winner of the whatchamacallit, though sounds like rhymes with the winner of the first quarterfinal between Cal Baptist and UCLA will face Stanford, while the winner of the USC Bucknell quarterfinal will face Cal in the semifinals. I'm just making sure that is correct. Yes, it is. The winner of UCLA Cal Baptist faces Stanford, and the winner of USC Bucknell will face Cal. And like I said, the whole shebang is going to be at USC, which is pretty cool. So it's not too bad. I mean, for Bucknell, it's kind of a little out there, considering Bucknell isn't really in California. But at the very least, we're going to be getting at least one Southern California men's water polo team into the semifinals. But honestly, I think USC will win their matchup against Bucknell. I don't know much about Bucknell. I admit it, but I will also say this. USC is a storied program. They don't go down that easily, and they are a determined group. I could see USC being the dark horse of this tournament. Like, Stanford is obviously the heavy favorite, and as well as Cal, but I think USC is just as good. And UCLA is kind of also good. I mean, they've had their ups and downs, and they have a young team, but honestly, I think the Bruins are just as good. And then USC obviously has some potent talent, yearly talent, year in and year out. And personally, I think, and this is USC's house, so it would be quite something if USC actually won in their place. But then everyone would be screaming conspiracy and whatnot, so we'll see. But I think it's going to be a fun time in the NCAA men's water polo tournament, and I'm glad that we'll get at least one Southern California team representing in the NCAA tournament. So we'll see how it goes between Cal Baptist, USC, and UCLA. It'd be also cool if we got an all Southern California final, but is the winner of UCLA Cal Baptist really going to beat Stanford? That is still to be determined. And the semifinals are next Saturday, and then the championship game is on March 21st, which is next Sunday. So that's pretty much your NCAA men's water polo news right there. So the NCAA men's water polo season is going faster than the speed of light, and it's almost reaching its climax. So we'll see what happens between those. We'll see what happens. But that's enough NCAA men's water polo talk for now. Let's go to some hockey action. So, hockey action between the Kings and the Ducks. Surprisingly, the Ducks actually, before their game against the LA Kings, the Ducks actually won a game. Yay! As last Saturday, they beat the Avalanche 5-4. Sorry about that, had ourselves a little technical difficulties, but we are back on live. So, yes, the Anaheim Ducks actually won a game, which is surprising. Yes, surprise. And the Ducks beat the Colorado Avalanche 5-4 in overtime. And it's like, thank God they actually won, because I didn't think that losing streak was ever going to end. So, good for the Ducks, and they are back to their winning ways. Unfortunately, I couldn't say that for the Kings, as the Kings actually had themselves a little bit of a cold streak. Ever since their 6-game winning streak, they actually went stone cold, and we're not even talking about Austin. Yeah, that was a bad pun. I'm sorry. I'll just show myself out. So, last Friday, a couple Fridays ago, the Kings lost to the Minnesota Wild. Well, the Wild beat them a second time, which was also not fun times for the Kings. And then the Kings lost to the Arizona Coyotes, and then they also lost to the St. Louis Blues. And just like that, the Kings had lost 4 in a row. But then the Kings beat the Blues 4-3 in overtime, which was like, yay! So finally, we got to see the Freeway Faceoff Part 2 between the LA Kings and the Anaheim Ducks. And boy, did it not disappoint, as it looked as if it was going to be all Ducks, as they led 2-1 after the first period. The Kings tied it up in the second period, but then the Ducks got 2 goals from Hutton and Silverberg, while Kempe scored for the Kings, and then Ricky Raquel scored for the Ducks in the second period, making the score 5-3. And it looked as if the Ducks were actually going to lock this one up. But we all got to remember, this is the Ducks we're talking about. Nothing ever good gets promised if you're the Ducks, as the Kings scored 2 goals in the third period, one coming early in the period and then one coming late in the period, and then at the end of the third period it was 5-5, and it looked as if the Ducks were going to choke another game. Luckily for the Ducks, Adam Henrik was able to notch the game-winning goal in overtime 3 minutes into the overtime period, and the Ducks were able to win 6-5, so good stuff for the Ducks. Unfortunately for the Ducks, the Kings got the last laugh, as the Kings dominated the Ducks 5-1 in the second game of the series. The Kings led 1-0 after the first period, then led 2-0 in the second period, until the Ducks finally got on the board and made it 2-1, and then the Kings just took over from there. They led 3-1 after the second period, and then the third period was just all Kings, and that's how the Kings won 5-1. So looking at the Kings and the Ducks in the standings, the Kings are still on the outside looking in, as they have 28 points. They are 11-8-6. They have 11 wins, 8 losses, and 6 overtime losses, while the Ducks are 8-13-6. They have 8 wins, 13 losses, and 6 overtime losses. The Kings have 28 points, while the Ducks have 22, and they are nowhere near the Coyotes and the Kings, who are tied for 5th. The Kings are only 1 game back of the Colorado Avalanche, so there's that right there. Still plenty of time for the Kings to catch up, because the top 4 teams in each little region go to the big dance. So there's that right there. So there's that for the Kings and the Ducks. I won't be talking too much about hockey, just because we're still in the midst of the NCAA tournament. I'll be talking more about the Ducks and the Kings next week, which I'll also be talking about next week as well. So there's that. Jumping over to some NBA action from last night, the Clippers came back from their NBA All-Star break and got back to their winning ways, just straight up hammering the Golden State Warriors 130-104. Kawhi was obviously Kawhi. Paul George was legit as well. Serge Ibaka was great as well. Overall, the third quarter was what really pulled the Clippers away from the Warriors. So good for the Clippers for getting the dub and finally getting back on track after they had lost 3 in a row. Next up for the Clippers is a game against the New Orleans Pelicans on Sunday, and then on Monday and Wednesday they play the Dallas Mavericks at Dallas. That's a nice little rematch right there from last year's NBA playoffs first round game. And then next Saturday the Clippers play the Charlotte Hornets at Staples Center. So as for the Lakers will be kicking off their season tonight, or the second half of their season tonight, against the Indiana Pacers. They play at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. On Monday, they play the Golden State Warriors in Oakland at 7:30 p.m. That's going to be a nice little matinee matchup. Next Tuesday, the Lakers play the Minnesota Timberwolves at Staples. Then on Thursday, the Lakers play the Charlotte Hornets. And then next Saturday, the Lakers play the Hawks. So I think they kind of get a little bit of a lighter schedule. Like, you look at those three games, the T-Wolves, the Hornets, and the Hawks. I think those are three winnable games. The Hawks have been through a lot of ups and downs. But the Hornets are kind of getting hot as of late. They're kind of in the thick of it when it comes to the Eastern Conference, which the East has just been a complete atrocity this year. So there's that right there. So we'll see how the Lakers do, but I think this is a good three-game stretch. I could see the Lakers at least going 3-1. They still don't have Anthony Davis. He's going to get reevaluated on Monday, but here's hoping Anthony Davis does heal and get better, because the Lakers do miss AD, and it's just not the same, honestly. So we'll see how it goes for the Lakers. But that's going to do it for some NBA chatter. Now let's jump over to the last part of the NCAA men's and women's basketball portion, and then I'll send you all on your way. So in terms of the Pac-12, we saved the Pac-12 for last. We'll start with the women's side. Last week, UCLA fought all the way, and they got all the way to the finals of the Pac-12 tournament. They even beat Arizona. Yay! Unfortunately for the Lady Bruins, they fell badly to Stanford. Stanford basically hammered them. I think they won by 20 points. I'm not sure, but either way, it was just a straight-up beatdown. Now, this does not mean UCLA's season is over. No! UCLA has been ranked all year, my dudes and dudettes, and honestly, UCLA's women's basketball team is going to make it to the NCAA tournament. I would be shocked if they were in the NIT. They've been ranked all year. They've been ranked mostly in the top 10. They even have a win over Stanford, for goodness sake. I don't see how UCLA does not get into the NCAA tournament. If they are not in that NCAA tournament, I am going to be raising HECK, and there will be carnage, as Cassidy once said in Spider-Man, or Venom, whichever you want to go off of. There will be carnage, but I'm just being silly. So there's that regarding the women's side. Now for the men's side. So the men's side, let's actually take our time machine and crank it all the way back to last week, where UCLA and USC played a thriller of a game. I unfortunately didn't see it, and I am kicking myself for not seeing this game, but it was an absolute thriller. UCLA led all the way, and it looked as if USC was going to lose, and I'm like, oh, it's over. USC's not going to win. And USC was doing all that they can to try to get back into this game, but to no avail, and it looked as if UCLA was going to pull out the win and keep their Pac-12 regular season hopes alive. But then, in the final seconds of the game, this happened.
3.7, SC has no timeouts. Anderson has to get it in. Edey from the corner. He got it! He got it with 1.4. USC in front. Bernard's prayer not answered. And the USC Trojans have stunned UCLA.
Yep, that is what happened. Taj Edey hit a game-winning three toward the end of the game with 1.4 seconds left to give USC a 64-63 victory over UCLA. I knew it was going to be close, and I saw the score that USC was down to. I'm like, please make a game-winning three. And then they gave it to Taj Edey, and then splish, splash, split-cack, step-back, split-cack. absolute cash. And honestly, it's quite amazing if you're a USC fan. But if you're a UCLA fan, you got to be crying in a corner or just absolutely frustrated that UCLA was leading the whole game, and then USC unfortunately came back and won. Also, I got to give a shout to Sparrow Ditas, the former Los Angeles Lakers radio announcer who was on the call. So there's that right there. So good job to Sparrow on that call, and good job to USC who won that game and basically was able to keep their Pac-12 regular season title hopes alive. Except not really, because Oregon was able to defeat Oregon State, which was to be expected. I wasn't overly surprised, but yeah. So Oregon was able to win the Pac-12 regular season championship. USC actually had all the tiebreakers except for win percentage. So that is the biggest slap in the face if you are USC. So it is what it is, but the Pac-12 tournament had USC as the number 2 seed, or has USC as the number 2 seed, and then they have UCLA as the number 4 seed. Before we get into the Pac-12 men's basketball tournament, Evan Mobley received the Pac-12 Player of the Year in terms of men's basketball, but that's not where it ends. Evan Mobley was not only the Pac-12 Men's Basketball Player of the Year, but he was the Pac-12 Men's Basketball Defensive Player of the Year. He was also the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year. So he got 3 awards in the span of one, and I believe he is the first player from USC to get all 3 awards at once. So that is great stuff for Evan Mobley, and it's absolutely amazing. He definitely deserves it, and I think he was also All-American second team, AP All-American second team. I'm not sure. But he's going to be garnering a lot of awards. Evan Mobley is a catalyst for USC, despite the Trojans being so young this year. So, and one thing I did not approve of was I did not approve of Taj Edey being all Pac-12 second team. The dude hits a game-winning three-pointer, and he still only gets Pac-12 all Pac-12 second team. And then also at one point, Taj Edey also had as many points as Oregon did in that blowout victory over the Ducks. So I kind of understand why, just because Oregon won the Pac-12, not USC, and Oregon gets 2 players in the Pac-12 all first team, and then Evan Mobley got the Player of the Year, so I guess they don't want to be too selfish for USC, but I still think Taj Edey got snubbed for all Pac-12 first team. But it is what it is. So I'm at least glad he got the honor of being Pac-12 second team. And the USC men's basketball account basically said it best. Taj Edey is all first team in our books. So there's that. So another big-time award that USC garnered in terms of the Pac-12 awards was that Andy Enfield was named the Coach of the Year for the in the Pac-12 men's basketball side of things, which is highly deserved. Like, USC was actually chosen to finish 6th in the Pac-12, and the fact that despite USC having a lot of young players and being chosen to finish 6th, they had 21 wins. 21. And they finished 2nd in the Pac-12. They probably could have finished 1st if it weren't for that loss to Utah or that loss to Oregon State, or if some of USC's games didn't... Well, actually, no. I think USC played all their games. But if some of Oregon's games didn't get canceled. So you never know what could have happened. But the fact that Andy Enfield led USC to a 2nd place finish in the ever so tough Pac-12 is absolutely amazing. He also beat out other nominees such as Tad Boyle of Colorado, Dana Altman of Oregon, Mick Cronin of UCLA. Heck, even Wayne Tinkle of Oregon State was a good candidate. So there's that. So and here's the thing. I always give Andy Enfield heck on Twitter, and same goes with every USC diehard. But Andy Enfield's just done an amazing job, and I can't really say enough about how Enfield has just made USC a consistently powerhouse-like team. Last year, I think USC could have made the NCAA tournament had it not been for the pandemic. The year before was a lot of turmoil for USC. The past 2 years, USC made the NCAA tournament, one of which they actually won an NCAA tournament game and almost advanced to the Sweet 16. So I think Andy Enfield has done a great job. It's just that when it comes to consistency down the stretch, that's where the USC struggles. I just hope Enfield can tweak a couple things going forward. If that happens, then USC could possibly be on top of the Pac-12 standings. But that all depends on where Evan Mobley wants to go after this season, whether he wants to go to the NBA draft or if he wants to stay at another year at USC. So, as for the Pac-12 men's basketball tournament, so yesterday we had UCLA taking on Oregon State, and disappointingly, and I say disappointingly for UCLA fans, UCLA lost to Oregon State 83-79. I actually forgot that game was going on, and then I looked down, I'm like, what? Oregon State is actually beating UCLA? I also do remember that Oregon State lost to UCLA twice this year, but the third time was the charm, which, oh, UCLA, how do you lose to Oregon State? Nothing against Oregon State. They've got some talented players like Gianni Hunt, Jared Lucas, and Ethan Thompson, all of which are Southern California products. But I will also say this, UCLA is too good to be losing in the quarterfinals. Everyone was even picking UCLA to make it to the finals. Everyone was picking UCLA to actually win the tournament. And you mean to tell me UCLA stopped playing basketball? I know what everyone's going to say. It's all Mick Cronin's fault or the ref's fault or USC's fault. But good teams are able to get the job done down the stretch. UCLA did not deserve to win. I am disappointed, UCLA. And here's the thing about UCLA. I could see them being an NCAA tournament team, but they're going to have a pretty bad seed. I could see them being 11th, which is according to like bracketology and everyone else. But they could also be as worse as maybe 14. I think they'll be an 11th seed, maybe 12 or 13 seed, but it could be close, depending on who gets in and who doesn't. So UCLA ended the season on a 4-game losing streak. They lost to Colorado, which was kind of expected. They lost to Oregon, somewhat expected. They kind of let up in that game. They lost to USC, which was kind of sort of unexpected, but UCLA was undefeated at home. And then they lost to Oregon State, which was absolutely disappointing. Where was this Oregon State team against Oregon? Why didn't they show up against Oregon? That could have been so great for USC, considering they would have won their first Pac-12 regular season championship since 1984-85. Beggars can't be choosers, I guess. So as for USC did almost as worse as UCLA did. USC had to go not 1 overtime, but 2 overtimes with Utah. And USC barely squeaked one out, winning 91-85 in double overtime. And luckily for USC, they had the unicorn that is Evan Mobley. He was absolutely amazing, and if it weren't for Evan Mobley, USC would be packing their bags and taking a first-round exit or a quarterfinal exit of the Pac-12 tournament. So there's that right there for USC. USC advances to the semifinals where they will face a very familiar foe in Colorado. Yeah, Colorado's kind of been USC's house of horrors the past 6 times. USC has lost them 6 times. They lost to them twice this year, and both of which were by double digits. So USC is really going to have their work cut out for them. And USC really has to contain McKinley Wright and Evan Batty and Dallas Walton and all those other talented players on Colorado. This Colorado team this isn't football. This is men's basketball where Colorado is actually good at this sport. So Please, USC. Please find a way to pull out the dub. And then on the other side of the Pac-12 men's basketball tournament bracket, Oregon is taking on Oregon State, which is cool. We get the Civil War Part 3. So fun times right there. So USC is the lone Pac-12 team in the Pac-12 tournament regarding Southern California. I could still see USC making the NCAA tournament. They've been ranked somewhat consistently. They were ranked in the second half of the season, and they came so close to winning the Pac-12 regular season championship. They even have a win over Oregon, and they have 2 wins over UCLA. The losses to Colorado suck, but that win over Oregon kind of says otherwise, especially if Oregon does win the Pac-12 tournament. So we'll see what happens with USC. So that's going to do it for the NCAA men's basketball portion of the show. And that's going to do it altogether for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show for today. So as for next week's show, I'm thinking I'm going to have this show next Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Why? Because it's kind of going to be difficult to have it on Friday. Because Friday I'm pretty busy. Wednesday I'm busy. Monday is not convenient and I'm busy. And Tuesday I've got set point. So it's pretty much Friday or bust for me. And then Saturday I'm also busy. So, man, the busyness is picking up for me, honestly. But that's all right. At least everything in the world is starting to reopen up again, and that makes me happy. Especially for like all the sports in terms of like high school and college. So I'm excited for everything that's going on, and I'm also excited for some March Madness. Like, if anything changes, I'll let you all know via Twitter. You can follow the SoCal Supreme Sports Show on Twitter at SoCal Show IESR. And you can follow me on Twitter at Teran Rodriguez 1. I'm mainly active on Twitter, and that's how you can find me. You can also follow IE Sports Radio as a whole on Twitter at IE Sports Radio and on Instagram at IE Sports Radio. And then on Facebook, you could follow IE Sports Radio by going to the search bar, typing in IE, the word sports, and then radio. And then if you see IE Sports Radio, your directory for all that sports background, that's us. So there's that right there. And that's going to do it for today's show. So without any further delay, let's get on out of here, as I've got a lot of important stuff to do. You feel me? Probably shouldn't have used the word "feel me" because I always use the word "feel me" when I exit from set point. Regardless, thank you all for tuning in to tonight's show of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I definitely appreciate you all tuning in. If you're listening live, it's greatly appreciated. If you're listening on the playback, I also appreciate it. And if you're listening wherever, whenever, I also appreciate it as well. And definitely check out all our remaining shows that are going on today, such as The Unfiltered Truth, which is going to be on in less than an hour, about 47 minutes away, where Bill Robinson III is going to be going live on StreamYard to talk about your Raider news. And also later on tonight, we have the Sports Couple Perspective with Larry B. and his lovely girlfriend, Cecilia, who will be going on at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. I don't know what they're going to be talking about, which is the unique thing of their show, but it's certainly going to be a great time with Larry B. and Cecilia. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourselves a great rest of the weekend. Enjoy your March Madness. I'm really excited. I hope USC, UCLA, and San Diego State have deep playoff runs. And I also hope Cal Baptist women's basketball does complete their perfect season. I hope that is the case. But without any further delay, I shall see you all next week for Set Point. Have a great night, everybody. And remember, SoCal is for SoCal. Peace!